Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, with the aftermath of Log4j or Log4j, depending on who you speak with the aftermath of all that being felt today, with the aftermath of that still being felt today, I wanted to explore more about why many leading information security tools still lack the visibility to detect critical vulnerabilities and the severe impact that this particular vulnerability has had on enterprise organisations, and also talk about the importance of speed as a key factor in remediation. So I've invited Ryan Purvis from Lakeside on the podcast today in a conversation about identifying severe dormant vulnerabilities before they become a massive threat. And also I wanted to explore more about Lakeside's ability to collect data every 15 seconds, especially when compared to 3 to 5 minutes for their market competitors. So I want to learn more about that and how it can lead to better insights and immediate actions which result in increased productivity and annualised costs for enterprise-sized corporations. For example, I also read recently that Dun & Bradstreet estimates that 59% of Fortune 500 companies experience a minimum of 1.6 hours of IT downtime every week, which has the potential to result in the loss of, nearly $1 million per week for a company that has roughly 10,000 employees. So with the scene perfectly set, I'm going to ask you now to buckle up and hold on tight, because I'm going to beam your ears all the way here to the UK so you can join me and Ryan in conversation. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Ryan. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So Ryan Purvis, I'm the head of solutions at Lakeside Software. I'm a South African and a British citizen. I've been living in the UK about 10 years now, and we flip between the two. I spent 10 years in the corporate space working on end user experience, where I found Lakeside as a product and took the plunge last year, November, to join them and helping customers to see the benefits of monitoring end user experience and making it better.
So as someone that lives both in the UK and South Africa, does that mean you never have to experience a winter again?
Well, we try not to, but we do still sometimes. I mean, South Africa can be just as cold, although the summers are pretty good. And I like winter here as well sometimes. Yeah. So we mix it up.
Awesome. Well, before we learn more about your success, I always like to learn a little bit more about how my guests got where they are today. So my question to you is how did you get here? What's your origin story, and where did your passion where did your passion for tech come from, and what lit that spark in you?
So I've been very lucky. My dad worked for an airline. So growing up, he traveled out of South Africa, and we used to get a lot of toys and stuff like that. And I remember him coming home with an XT computer, which I proceeded to break by putting on a password or dismantling something, and you had to have it fixed a few times. And that started it. And I used to always find ways to find more knowledge, learn new things by breaking and fixing. And my whole career has been finding ways to solve problems using technology. I started off in the Microsoft partner space after working on my own for a long time, building websites when websites were just coming out. And when I moved to the UK 10 years ago, I flipped from being a partner or a supplier to being the actual customer. So I've had experience of both worlds now, and I'm back on the solving problem side as an SI or ISV with a product and a way to solve problems.
And that's one of the reasons I invited you on the podcast today, was to talk about Log4j. And for anyone that missed the huge story, can you offer an overview of how businesses are still being impacted today?
Sure. So Log4j, or Log4j, depending on who you speak to, is a framework that's open sourced, and it's used by many products to collect audit information or logged information in their software. The reason why this is such a big deal is this is a third-party component, usually to something that actually this was a feature that's now becoming an exploit. And the exploit is that you can send anything into the API of this framework, and it gets processed without checking what it's actually doing. And you can obviously use, and because of the privileges that this component normally has, you can pretty much do anything you like in an environment. So reading your Active Directory, deleting your whole Active Directory, those things can all happen. So what we did with our product, we're not an out-and-out heuristic security tool, but we do collect a lot of information. And one of those things is we can find out what file versions are around. And we use that as a way to detect Log4j in the environment. And a couple of our customers grabbed onto this, got SNHU and a few others. They were able to detect where the issues were and then patch it appropriately. Now, the patches were also quite interesting in the sense that they fixed it once, but then they had to fix it again because, again, it was still a feature, not a bug, in the way that they fixed it. So now we are able to show which version you should be looking for as a minimum. And also, when a vendor fixes it on their side, you can see how it propagates through the environment.
And for anyone that did miss the story, and to bring it to life somewhat, how severe was that impact that vulnerability had on enterprise organisations? I'm sure you've got a few stories there around it and how it crippled organisations, didn't it?
Yeah, sure. So I guess the first thing to point out is there's very few vulnerabilities get rated as a 10 on the scale of 1 to 10, and this was a 10. And I think the biggest concern here for some of these organizations is it wasn't the software that they owned. They hadn't gone and bought Log4j. They had bought something else that was using Log4j. So it's hidden in the background. Now, there weren't many, thankfully, that went down due to vulnerability of our customers, but there were many that were able to detect it firsthand and remediate it within 24 hours, 48 hours. And we were able to put our solution out in a matter of hours. From finding the problem and building it. In fact, we got on a Saturday was the release, and we had our first pack out by the Monday morning when guys came online in my team. So generally, the stories we have are success stories of customers finding the thing and patching it. And as the new patches came out, they were able to roll out new patches quite quickly. But it's still widespread. I mean, we're talking almost 6 months ago. And I'm still hearing about stuff where a customer's been impacted, or they're finding that they aren't patched and they thought they were. And that's where our tool has come in quite nicely.
And it's really intriguing, this, because like you said, 6 months later, you're still hearing all these stories about it. And within a few hours of it landing, you guys had the patch out there. So the big question I've got to ask is, why are so many leading information security tools still lacking the visibility to detect critical vulnerabilities like this?
In this case, I think it's just a simple thing. I mean, we're talking about almost a bill of materials problem, which is when you buy a piece of software, you're buying software X, but you don't know what was being used to make software X, what third parties, what libraries, etc. So the bill of materials problem is one where when you buy something, you should be told all the third parties that have been used in building your software, whether it's open source or it's proprietary. That's one aspect to it. I think the other piece is that some of these things are, as I say, not necessarily bugs. They actually are features. This was a feature of the framework that you could do these things, but no one ever thought about the ramifications because someone exploited it. All of a sudden, that feature became not a bug, but a serious vulnerability. And then I think there's a third aspect to this, which is sometimes the combinations of things you put together opens up a doorway. And because we're always rushing things out to be good enough, we sometimes miss the obvious gaps, which lead to security vulnerabilities.
And one of the things that really stands out from your story here is how quickly you acted on this. So am I right in saying that, in your mind, speed is everything in attacks like this?
Of course. I mean, once a vulnerability gets out there, and I mean, they call them 0 days for a reason. Yeah. You need to be able to respond quickly, and you need to be able to respond with the information that you've got. And we've got a very deep set of information we collect in the environment, but to be able to use it and to action on it. That's the most important piece. Is it's all good knowing about it, but it's also being able to do something about it. And that's really what we enabled our customers, was to be able to do something.
And we've talked a lot about the background and how we got where we are now, but can you tell me a little bit more about the solution and how digital experience monitoring and how it uses data to make decisions? Because that's where the magic happens, right? Yeah.
So we've been around 20 plus years. It's an agent that's deployed on the desktops. We cover all the main sort of types in the sense of operating systems and VDI and that sort of thing. It's collecting data all the time. We're in the sort of tens of thousands of data points that we collect or can collect, which is most in the industry. And what we do is we collect that information and we store it centrally, and we have some algorithms and some processing that we do to make that data actionable and useful. And that's presented through our UI. And then we have what we call DEX packs, DEX, which is digital experience packs. And those are use cases that we have found in the industry that solve problems. So if you're doing a migration from physical to virtual, we have a use case for that, which is delivered through a DEX pack. Employee wellness, which is something that we've been working on quite a lot now, obviously post-pandemic, making sure people are taking breaks and not having too much screen time. We can detect that through the information we're collecting, because we're collecting everything off the desktop from a resource point of view, so CPU, memory, disk, network utilization, to the applications that are being used. There's always the risk of the big brother question. I mean, are you monitoring the people for that sort of thing? And we do have the ability to anonymize the data. And we've also put some steps in place where we cover off some of the privacy requirements of the very stringent countries, your France, your Germany's, etc. That data we've got, as I say, through the DEX packs and also through the tool itself, gives an engineering person or an operations person, and now especially the business leader, the information to make decisions. So should you be buying an extra screen for users to increase their productivity or reduce their eye strain? Should you be looking at different size screens? When it comes to purchasing or provisioning a desktop from a resource point of view, number of CPUs, number of gigs of RAM, hard drive size, we can tell you with a good amount of comfort what you should be going after. And this helps, various parts of the business. And, whenever I've moved into a business that doesn't have these sorts of tools, you see how much is opinionated about buying hardware for someone versus actually, factually based. So it's very powerful in the multitude of use cases you can use this kind of software and our software for.
And I consider myself very fortunate to get to speak with so many different companies in this space. And it is a slightly overcrowded market, you could argue. But one of the things that really attracted me to you guys and why I invited you on the podcast today was Lakeside's Digital Experience Cloud and how it humanises IT operations with its ability to not only collect data needed to avoid technology events, but also respond in a manner that is understood by employees at every level of the organisation. And one of the things I try and do on this podcast is put everything in a language that everybody understands. So can you tell me a little bit more about that and why that's so important to you too?
Oh, yes. So and this is something that, I was a customer of Lakeside for 10 years. And one of the things that we struggled with was getting people to understand the data we were collecting and visualize it in a way that they would understand. And one of the things that's happened here in the most recent times is not necessarily simplification of it, but being able to tie data to business goals. And this is where the DEX packs, again, are a big thing in the sense of, we have a specific use case with a specific prescribed way of solving that problem in a simple way. So anyone can look at the interface and go, okay, I understand what I need to do. I understand using colors and simple information, what the problems are. And this comes back to our approach to using the data and making it more digestible for a business user. The other thing that's great about the way that this product works is there's an engagement element too. So when we calculate a health score, for example, for the system, so we can say this system is an 80% health score, and that's based on how much impact there is technically. So that's the technical part. But we can engage with the user and say, we're currently seeing that your health score is good. Would you confirm that? And there's a survey that pops up. Or we provide a way for the user to self-help and fix something themselves. So if there's let's say they're running out of disk space. Now, typically they're running out of disk space, they would do some basic things themselves. We have an automation that helps them to do that themselves. So they're right-clicking on something and saying, run the fix to clean up the disk without having to log a ticket and having to wait for an IT support person to come and help them. The next step on that is even proactive stuff where the engine or the agent that's on the machine is fixing things for the user on their behalf proactively. If we know about running out of disk space and you reach a threshold, we can fix it for you. So these are all things that make end user experience better, but also the end user is part of that journey. They're not just being treated like the passenger on the vessel. They're actually driving a vessel. And one of the things that, when I was running this in a business, making the user part of that journey was the most difficult thing to do, because they were so used to having IT do everything for them, and realizing that they had to actually be part of the solution. Once you got them on board, it was great, because they understood their role and where the technology had to do its part, and where the support staff would help them.
And I think it was last year I spoke with Peter Collins from Lakeside about the future of digital workplaces, bridging the 2021 digital experience between CEOs, IT leaders and employees. And I know you do a lot of work with Citrix around that, but I'm curious, where do you go from here? What's next for Lakeside? Is there anything you can share about the road ahead and your big focus?
Yeah, so we're really trying to harmonize what the platform does. So cloud first is key to our strategy. We were the first players to go to cloud in the space, and then to holistically provide data collection across all the different platforms. You have thin clients, you have Mac OS, you have Windows, you have obviously different flavors of Windows at the moment, and then also to mobile. So those are things that we're working very hard on getting out to the market. And then also with the different parts of the application, we have applications that focus on end user support, or your level 1, 2, and 3. We have engineering stuff, and then this business or executive view of the real estate. Those are things that we're focusing on now for the next period.
Awesome. Well, I've loved chatting with you today. We did begin the podcast talking about your origin story, so now we've come full circle. I'm going to ask you, is there a song, piece of music, a book, or anything that has helped you, inspired in your career, or just something you'd love to leave the listeners with on an inspirational note? I know you've listened to the podcast before, so I suspect you knew this was coming. So what are you going to leave us with?
And I've agonized over the answer to this one. And there were so many books, so many things. But I came to an epiphany yesterday, listening to one of your episodes. In fact, you had a South African on my birthday in Schiphol. And it made me think of this song. So this is our national anthem, Nkosi Sikelel' Africa. It combines 5 languages. The key message to this, and this is an anthem that's a few countries in Africa use, but it's something that brings a lot of pride to me. And it's all about, as I say, unity. But also, there's parts of the song that really make me think about how things should work. And there's a specific phrase, which is the call. It literally says the call to come together, which makes me now getting goosebumps. And it just, if I'm having a down day or I need a bit of inspiration, it's on my list, and I just play it, and it gets me going again.
Wow, what a great choice. I will proudly add that to our Spotify playlist. And for anyone listening who wants to find out more information about Lakeside Software and the work that you're doing and some of the topics we explored today and keeping up to speed with some of those threats, what's the best starting point for everything?
So they can get us, obviously, at lakesidesoftware.com website, me on LinkedIn, Ryan Purvis. I've got a podcast as well, The Digital Workspace Works. They can look at, I talk a lot about this kind of stuff there. But just reach out to us. We're happy to help.
Awesome. Well, I'll be checking that podcast out myself. And just thank you so much for coming on today, talking about the attacks, providing some much-needed context around why many leading information security tools lack the visibility to detect critical vulnerabilities, the importance of acting quickly, and avoiding the impacts that those vulnerabilities can have on enterprises. But more than anything, thank you for sharing your story and leaving us with that great song and the story behind it too. Thank you so much, Ryan.
Great. Thanks for having me.
With speed being such a critical factor in remediation, I love how Lakeside's ability to collect data every 15 seconds compared to that 3 to 5 minutes for their competitors really stands out to me, and the kind of difference that speed and agility can have. And I guess that's why Lakeside reacted to the Log4j attack in hours rather than days, weeks or months. But over to you. What has your experiences been around this? Email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram @NeilC.Hughes. We'll keep this conversation going, but now it's time to spin the wheel of misfortune, which will reveal what tomorrow's topic is going to be. But of course, the answer to that, you're going to have to join me again tomorrow. So hopefully you will join me again then. But a big thank you for listening today, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.